All right, y'all, we are back with another video. I definitely had to bring y'all this one. We got some breaking news. Now, even this the Minnesota killer Vance Belter pretty much told the police that Tim Walz instructed him to take out the politicians. I'm trying to be careful with my words and stuff like that because YouTube like to flag. But come to find out now, this is what just posted. Now, Tim Walz got the answer to this. If y'all been watching the little series that we've been doing on this, covering this whole Tim Walz situation, I've been saying that Tim Walz is to blame for that. This is the man that kept saying Democrats need to get meaner. Democrats need to go out and do this. That they happy what these illegals been doing in California, like tearing up stuff, throwing rocks at police officers, attacking police officers. And now Vance Belter had just pretty much just told the police that Tim Walz instructed him to do those assassinations that he did. So we definitely about to get straight into it. Now, Benny does have more on this. We about to check out his video. Please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Shout out to everybody showing so much support, and shout out to the ones who always stay to the very end. And let me know in the comment section that you did watch the entire video. I appreciate all of you that do that, and the ones that come straight in and hit that like button. I really, really appreciate it. And like I said, put in the comment section, Waltz for prison. Yeah, that's exactly where he need to go, because it's kind of funny now that this guy is coming out talking about that Tim Walz instructed him, but yet remember, the same people, these Democrats been saying, oh, this guy's a MAGA supporter. He supports Donald Trump. This is what they do all the time. And we ain't falling for this crowd. Tim Walz hired this guy and his wife, but yet they want to say that this guy is MAGA. No, he's not MAGA. MAGA don't do stuff like this. So like I said, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive straight into it. Now, as y'all can see on the screen, this is one we were talking about yesterday. It said breaking: Minnesota shooting suspect Vance Belter reportedly blamed Governor Tim Walz for his rampage in a confession letter. The letter was allegedly intended for Cash Patel. Then if we go to this one right here, you can see what Tony just said, that Tim Walz has some explaining to do. So look at this little part right in here. It says, just in a letter to the FBI, Vance Belter claimed Governor Tim Walz instructed him to take out U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar so that Walz could run for U.S. Senate. And this is by Minnesota Star Tribune. So if y'all can see, it said that, that this guy said that Tim Walz instructed him. I've been saying this for the longest, that Tim Walz was something that just running his mouth. He knew exactly what was going on. So that little stuff he was saying at the podium, it was fake. It was all fake. He knew exactly what was going on the entire time because he wanted the U.S. Senate seat, so he instructed him. I don't think this guy just going to go to jail and just lie. He's saying he was instructed by Tim Walz to do this because they didn't like that Melissa Hortman then, pretty much sided with President Trump, that illegals don't need health care. They don't even supposed to be here. We're just talking about getting them health care. So when she voted against that, so is it coming to find out now that Tim Walz instructed him to go do that? Because that's what it sounds like. So let's go ahead and dive straight into this right here by Benny, because he has a little bit more on this, y'all. Let's go.
What's up, guys? It's Benny. Shout out to all the people who stayed very salty and very frosty on this creepy and dark, twisted story out of Minnesota. Turns out the noticers were right again. There is something else going on here, and now we have the proof. Vance Belter, the alleged lone wolf who just went crazy and started politicians out of nowhere. He was just managing a 7-Eleven a couple months ago. Don't worry, he's totally MAGA. Just listen to the media. No, he's definitely not. And when we watched him get apprehended by special forces with that creepy MK Ultra look in his eye, something didn't square. And the entire internet noticed, at least those who wish to ask questions about things like this. Something seems very off, everyone
We've been
said.
saying that for the longest.
And now it turns out to be true. Now here's what we know. We know that his wife worked for Tim Walz. Here's the proof. She worked for Tim Walz in 2011 when he was a congressman. We know that he had an anti-Trump No Kings posters in the back of his vehicle. Not exactly.
And that's the thing. No Kings, what they pretty much protesting against President Trump, but yet that this guy is a MAGA supporter. He supports President Trump. Like, get out of here with this. Why do Democrats do this all the time? I said this in my last two videos. Why do they do this? They be calling for violence, and soon as one of their people do it, they want to say he was a Trump supporter. He was MAGA. His own roommate coming out talking about, oh, he loved Trump. No, he don't. Y'all gotta stop doing this crap. We ain't finna go for this. Every time when y'all call for violence and one of y'all sides does this, y'all want to always bring it back to President Trump. Like, no.
MAGA activities, we know that he was a murderous monster. At least that's what the authorities say. This is him in this strange footage. I wish they'd release all of it, with a latex mask on, dressed like a police officer. This is before he committed his murders. We know that the police officers engaged him outside of the house of the Speaker of the House, a Democrat named Melissa Hortman in Minneapolis, dressed like this. They got into a firefight, and then they let him enter the home and commit the murders and then escape, which makes no sense to me. No one's yet been able to explain that to me. Doesn't make any sense.
Can't see how he got away.
You know, the police fired a hail of bullets. Somehow the out of shape, limping, overweight Vance Bolter was able to get away and escape, even though they had the house surrounded. And then this master criminal just kept leaving clues like this, straight out of a Scooby-Doo novel. Here's his hat that just happened to be found on the side of the road. Vance Belter himself was appointed by Governor Walz.
Yep.
Here's the letter of appointment. Business member for the governor's Workforce Development Board. This is a prestigious workforce, and here's Tim Walz's signature. So the two definitely knew of each other. I mean, that Tim Walz is signing the paperwork with his name on it.
Yeah, he knows.
There's no way to argue against that. But the question remained, why the hell would this guy do this? He has a very strange background. He worked for an NGO that was relocating Africans to Minnesota. Again, that don't make no sense. He left his family of 5. He commits these murders. He's found in a field. There's something missing here. Well, we found out yesterday that Vance Belter blamed Governor Walz in a confession letter. Now, this is after authorities told us, no, there's no confession letter. There's no manifesto.
Yeah, they lied.
Which one is it?
They're trying to cover up.
Because here are credible, very respected Minnesota news outlets writing exclusive. Vance Belter blames Tim Walz for rampaging confession letter. Okay, what does the letter say? Multiple sources with direct knowledge of the investigation claim that to Alpha News that Belter's so-called confession letter was intended to go to Kash Patel, director of the FBI. Well, now we've learned something even more horrifying. Just like that, the story gets more disturbing. Minnesota assassin Tim Walz appointee Vance Belter wrote a letter to the FBI claiming the military trained him in secret. Huh? And that Tim Walz personally instructed him to take out these politicians and target other Democrat politicians.
Wow.
Representative Amy Klobuchar was one that was listed. This is a senator from Minnesota, and some have speculated that Tim Walz wanted to run for the Senate seat. The military trained him? That's what he says? He said he was secretly trained, covertly trained by the military? Let's watch.
Who disguised himself as a cop on Democrat politicians and their spouses. He too and seriously injured 2 others. Today we're finding out he wrote a letter to the FBI claiming he was trained by the U.S. military, quote, off the books, and that Tim Walz asked him to kill Amy Klobuchar so he could take her Senate seat.
Wow.
Belter's facing state and federal murder charges.
Did I just hear that right? Woo. What is the background there? Can I read more? Yes, here from the Minnesota Star Tribune.
We said there plenty of time that Tim Walz need to go to jail. He need to be right there with Vance Belter. He need to be right there. I knew something wasn't right. Then all of a sudden, somebody go to the back of Melissa Hoffman's house, pull the little old board down and bust the one out. What they tried to go over there and cover it up because they didn't steal anything. Come to find out they didn't take anything from the house. So what did they go in there and do? Was they wiping off fingerprints? What was they doing? So we still got to get answers for that.
The biggest paper in all of Minnesota. Letter to the FBI, the shooting suspect made wild claims about Klobuchar and Walz, sources say. People with direct knowledge say Vance Belter addressed the FBI. In this letter, they framed the letter as rambling and conspiratorial, but can you please produce the contents of the letter? Accused Minnesota assassin wildly claimed that Tim Walz instructed him to Amy Klobuchar. Belter alleged in the letter that Democrat vice presidential candidate directed him to murder Amy Klobuchar as part of a supposed plot to take her Senate seat. Minnesota Star Tribune reported. Is this why they hid the manifesto? Is this why they keep lying? They have had multiple different stories on this.
Yep.
You always know that someone's trying to cover something up when the stories aren't consistent.
I believe that's
when
what they're trying to do
to you, even about small things.
They're trying to cover up.
We heard there was a manifesto. Then we heard the authorities were going through the manifesto, and then the authorities told us there was no manifesto. Was this why? In a rambling conspiratorial letter addressed to the FBI, Governor Tim Walz instructed him, Senator Amy Klobuchar, and presumably other Democrats, so that Walz could run for U.S. Senate. According to two people familiar with the contents of the letter is the clearest evidence yet of Belcher's mindset after the targeted violence against Minnesota politicians last week. It's 1.5 pages long, confusing and hard to read, according to two people familiar with the letter's content. It includes Belcher's alleging that he had been trained by the U.S. military off the books, and that Walz, who is not running for Senate, had asked him to kill Amy Klobuchar and others. Well, release the letter, I guess.
Don't have to.
I mean, are there any word from the U.S. military on this? Has there been any type of report other than to just call him a conspiracy theorist? Can we just get some verifiable evidence that there's no connection here? Because everything that we see, that there is a connection here. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. Like the guy, nothing in the guy's story makes any sense. He does have connections to Tim Walz. He does have a life that can't be explained. He was working at a 7-Eleven. Then he's working as a security guard. Then he's working as a mortician, pulling eyeballs out of corpses. That's a matter of fact. And then he was running a nonprofit to resettle Africans into Minnesota. And then more importantly, is this why the house was burgled? This is something that I still can't square.
That's what I was saying. That's the reason why the house could have been broken in, because they were trying to go in there and like get rid of some evidence, wipe out some fingerprint. That's what I was just saying. That was something ain't right. Something is going on, and hopefully we get the full story of this whole entire situation.
The murder scene, somebody broke into the murder scene and cased the place. They didn't take anything. They didn't rip any TVs out of the wall. They didn't take any of the jewelry. They just went in. Nothing was missing. And cops said, don't worry about it. Forget about it. But the house was, the murder scene was burglarized. What is it? What the hell is that about? For the life of me, I can't figure this one out. But it seems like a cleanup operation to me. It just seems like that would be the only reason to go burglarize a murder scene. Break and report I could think of. Assassinated Minnesota lawmaker days after double murder. So why would anybody want to break? Why would anybody need to break in here? Is there something more that they're trying to cover up? Are they trying to clean up their tracks? I mean, that's the only logical explanation. See if this makes any sense to you. Here's the authorities. Here's the police officers explaining how they engaged Vance Belcher outside of this residence. The authorities let him into listen carefully here. The authorities let him into the house, allowed him to go in, commit the murders, and then escape by their own admission. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just old fashioned. That just all of it seems off. And now with this explanation, like, can we get a proper, I mean, I hope we get a proper investigation here. Somebody needs to call Tim Walz for questioning. I think that is probably a good place to start.
I think that is a good place to start, though, because they need to get Tim Walz on camera and let him answer to these questions of, hey, is this guy lying on you? Is this true? I believe Tim Walz got something to do with this. They say he wanted to take a Senate seat, so I don't know, man. But, I mean, you can't trust it. Think about it. Tim Walz lies all the time. We caught him in a lot of lies. So we already know about that. Let me see. Let's go.
Anyway, here's the clip.
Belcher then traveled to Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, in the home of Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman. At approximately 3:30 a.m., Belcher arrived at Representative Hortman's house in his black SUV with the police license plates. He parked in the driveway and left the emergency lights on his SUV flashing, as if he was a police officer. Belcher approached Representative Hortman's home, again dressed as a police officer, wearing the tactical vest and body armor, and wearing that hyper-realistic mask. He was armed and carrying a flashlight. Before he entered the home, 2 Brooklyn Park police officers arrived at the scene. they too had been dispatched to check on Representative Hortman after learning of the shooting of Senator Hoffman. When they arrived at the scene, they saw Belter's black SUV parked in the driveway with the emergency lights flashing, and they saw Belter standing in front of the house several feet from the door. When Belter saw the officers get out of the car, he drew his weapon and began firing. He rushed into the house through the front door, firing into it. He repeatedly fired into the house, and when he entered, he murdered Representative Hortman and her husband, Mark. The Brooklyn Park police officers fired at Belter as he rushed into the home, but he escaped into the home and out the.
So that right there is just crazy. Like, 2 police officers was on the scene. They let him shoot in the house, then go in the house and take out, the 2 individuals. I mean, that right there is crazy. I mean, it's something going on that we got to get to the bottom of. I just don't trust these people at all. Something is not right here. But like I said, I will keep y'all updated with everything that's going on. Like I said, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Shout out to the ones who stayed to the end. I really, really appreciate it. And I'll catch y'all in the next one.